I recently noticed that my channel has reached 2,000 subscribers, so I'd like to thank everyone for their viewership, and to celebrate the milestone, I've decided I'll be putting together this model of the Baldwin 6-axle BP20 Sharknose diesel. This here is a resin kit originally developed by Miracle Castings, but now made by Unexpected Products. And for about $100, you get a high-quality shell here with the chassis frame, along with the fuel tank, set of details, and some handrail wire. The only thing it needs is a pair of power trucks, which will come from an Athearn PA-1, and a motor, which this is also designed to hold an Athearn motor, but since this is a really huge engine, I've decided to instead use this sort of legendary Faulhaber motor here. So this is a coreless motor. These normally retail for hundreds of dollars, I guess, but a lot of times you can find these for surplus for pretty low prices, which is how I got this one. Added a Northwest Shortline flywheel on there so it can coast a little. This motor has about 6 times more torque than the motors that you'll find in your typical large HO scale diesel. So this thing should have some massive pulling power when it's done. So let's get to building this kit. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this is a very high quality resin shell casting, but even with that, there's still some little bits of flash and other seams to take care of. So for really big ones like this, I'll start just by gently filing it. You don't want to do much with the file on these resin kits though, just because they're quite a bit softer than the metal kits that I usually work on. So I'll take it off most of the way, but then finish it off with sandpaper. And this area here, I'll smooth out completely once the pilot is attached to it, since they're kind of supposed to blend into each other. Now for the windshield here, there's just a thin amount of the resin material. Still pretty hard and stiff though, but kind of have to chip that out. File in there a little bit. Probably sand the rest of the way. Just got to be careful not to damage any details. Now as for the frame, this is a part that you'll never actually see once the model's assembled, so just go ahead and file away at any flash. Don't worry too much about appearances. It just has to be clean. Alright, so I've already done some work on the body, gotten the pilot attached, obviously. I just need to do a bit of sanding, filing, filling around there to make it nice and smooth. Still need to clear out the windows, but the rest of it is looking good. And for the top area here, they give you 2 of these grill pieces, just in case you break the first one. So the way you clear these out, you can either really carefully cut out the excess plastic there, or you can sand it by moving it back and forth that way. I've tried both ways on this one and it's still giving me some trouble. So what I decided to do instead is 3D print my own part to use in place of it. And this one might actually have a more exact fit anyway, so I think that'll turn out looking pretty good. Just need to do a tiny bit more work on it to make it perfect, but yeah, that's turning out nice. Then as for the chassis, I've got the fuel tank attached now. They give you screws to use there. You have to locate and drill your own holes, which is easy enough. I've also ground out this area of the chassis so that I can fit the motor, which will sit right there and be at the correct height to line up with the trucks. And there's also room for the flywheel. And I'll soft mount the motor to make sure it's as quiet as possible. Then as for the trucks, this was made to fit the modern Athearn PA-1 trucks, but the ones I have are the old metal ones, which are assembled a bit differently. They use the standard hole in the center instead of the kind of oddly shaped plate that they used on the later ones, which was copied from the SD40 trucks. I don't know, maybe they just move a bit smoother or something. But anyway, modifying the frame to fit those was pretty easy. I just added these studs inside of here. They're made from brass tubing. And then I filed a bit out of here to clear the contact strip on the rear truck. Also, I don't really know how long Athearn did this, but they made some of their gears out of blue plastic, which is interesting. And that is an original gear there. It's just different, and I don't know why. Alright, so I got the mechanism put together real quick just for testing, and forgot that I don't have any spare good quality universals, so these are just some old things I pulled out of the junk box. Like, this one's really wobbly, and then this drive tubing is probably 50 or 60 years old and not exactly in the best condition, but I can at least do a bit of testing with this. It seems to be running very nicely so far. The old trucks have a little bit of a growl, but they're smooth and still fairly quiet, so I think this is going to turn out to be a very nice runner. And now jumping ahead, I've got all the details put together. They provided some very fine brass wire for the handrails, which was nice. Then up here I used scale parts for these Pennsylvania antenna. It took 2 of the kits actually, because they're designed for the standard 4-axle RF16, which had fewer posts. And just use some brass wire in there. This isn't glued on yet, I just have that in place for appearances. And then as for the ladders here, they did provide some with the kit, but I found that they actually didn't quite match the shape of the prototype, so I went again into my 3D printer and gave that a shot. I think they turned out pretty well. I might try putting on some improved ones at some point later. These back ones here I made from brass. And then the rear pilot, I also printed out a piece there. It's not exactly perfect, but it should look good enough at least to fill in that space. Since this was designed to use Athearn trucks, they were counting on having the truck-mounted swinging coupler, so I think that's why that whole area was left open, but I'm going to be body mounting the couplers. And for the ladders down here, instead of body mounting them or chassis mounting them, there just wasn't enough space to give good clearance for tight curves, so I truck mounted the ladders instead. So those move with the truck and don't get in the way, but it still looks good enough that most of the time you don't even notice until it's on a curve. And for the pilot, I did a lot of sanding and filling around here. It doesn't look perfect since it's not painted, but that's actually just about as smooth as glass right there, so once the paint is actually on there, that should look really good. And then as for the chassis, I've still got the tubing and old universal in there, but I've got some good quality Northwest Shortline parts on the way. And then I added a bit of weight inside of that fuel tank area, but then I also added a bunch more inside of the shell, and combined with the metal trucks, the heavy motor, and very thick resin, this thing weighs close to 2 pounds, so this should have a ton of traction when it's done. And I wired it up in there using some little clip terminals so I can easily pull those off of the steel truck frames, but they also have a decent electrical contact. So the shell just fits right on there. And it still runs smoothly. And that motor has really, really high torque, so that gives this thing some nice slow speed control. I actually haven't even oiled these trucks because I'm going to be pulling them apart and painting them anyway. But even without any oil or grease, I mean, that's just really good low speed operation there, so it should be even better once I actually have the things prepared and ready to run. So now it's time to get on to painting. I've got the main color on. I think that turned out looking really nice. I decided to go with the red on here. It just needs a little minor touch up in a few places, but I think I can get started on decals. So for that, I'm going with the Microscale Pennsylvania set for E units. It's the only one I could find that really matched the photos of these very well, so I'll get started on that and then get to finishing this. Decals are on and set, touch-up painting is done, so now all that's left is giving it its final clear coat, put in some window glass, and then I can reassemble this thing. Alright, so while I was trying to put in the window glass, I hit a bit of a snag, You can see in here that the shape of the molding inside of the cab is actually pretty thick, pretty rough. And I was trying for maybe an hour to put a piece of glass just inside one of the windshield areas, and I just couldn't get it shaped or fit correctly. And at this point, I think I'm a little too frustrated to try and continue with that part. So for now, I'm just going to leave the windows open without glass. Maybe I'll try again eventually, but for now, I've got the dull coat on, and I think that the shell turned out looking really good. I also have the chassis fully assembled, which you can see here, and I think that turned out great. The motor is soft mounted on some thin pieces of foam, which I've glued in. It's stiff enough to hold the motor firmly, but soft enough that it dampens any possible vibration from it and that flywheel, so that helps to make it a little quieter. Got Northwest Shortline universals installed, and that also helps to make it quieter, take out some vibration. And now I think I'll put this thing back together. Oh, and I also put in a headlight bulb here and wired a diode to that, so it's got directional lighting. So you can see here that everything turned out looking good. Even the truck mounted ladders don't look too out of place. Of course, they swivel out when the truck does, but when the truck is straight, they almost look like they're part of the body. Everything else turned out looking good. I put a Kadee number 58 on the back there, mounted to a little block that I made in the 3D printer. I was also going to put a number 58 onto the front, but I found that the mounting block that is molded into the shell actually holds it a bit too low. So for now, I have a dummy coupler on there until I can get one that has a raised head on it. So aside from that lack of window glass, which again, I may try to put in later, this model is finished. So there it is on the layout. And before I start running it, I thought I'd give you just a quick comparison with a few other engines to show you just how huge this thing is. So to start out, here's the 4-axle Sharknose with the same body design. Lining up the back there. There we go. So yeah, you can see just how much of a difference there is between those 4- and 6-axle Sharks. This looks downright tiny in comparison, even though it's about the same size, maybe a little larger than an F unit. So, going up in size, its passenger competition at the time would have been the E7. So here's that Hobby Town that I built a while ago. And even that looks a little bit small next to the 6-axle Sharknose. It's more than an inch shorter in HO scale. So pretty impressive just how large of an engine this is. And then going up even a little more in length, since the DL109 has the same trucks as this one, I thought maybe it would be as long. As it turns out, it isn't. It's still shorter than the 6-axle Sharknose, the BP20. And of course, this one's also quite a bit shorter. Getting down here level with it, you can see the roof of this is quite a bit taller than the roof of the DL109. So then going up even more in size, here's an SD80. Lining up the platform with the back of the body on the BP20. The length is finally about the same, but that's only if you're counting the walkways here. When you're looking at the body, the BP20 is still the bigger engine. So with that, I'd say this is officially the largest 6-axle diesel engine that I have ever owned. And it may just be one of the largest that was ever built. It really was quite an impressive sight to behold, I'm sure, if you ever got to see one of these in real life. Now let's get this thing running. Takes off nice and smooth with that big coreless motor. High torque really helps a lot there. It works nicely at low speeds too. It's got really good speed control. Those first generation Athearn PA-1 trucks aren't exactly the quietest runners, but that's still not bad. And there's the full speed at 12 volts. I've calculated that to be about 70-75 scale miles per hour, so maybe a bit slower than the real BP20s would be doing pulling a passenger train, but still not bad for the layout. Now, putting it through some switches over here, bringing it over to the 18-inch radius track. Just glides right on through those switches, no problem. And it doesn't even care whether it's an 18 or 22-inch radius. It just goes right through it all, as smooth as can be. Of course, it looks a little bit ridiculous on a curve that tight. But it's still nice to know that it has the ability to go through those, so if anyone has a smaller layout, well, they can still run this engine. So there it is. It's a nice running, nice looking finished model. And aside from a couple things, it honestly wasn't too hard to put this together. So for $100 minus a drive, then just get a donor Athearn PA-1. It's honestly not a bad deal when you consider the only other way to get one of these engines in HO scale is an expensive brass product, and I haven't really seen too many of those around, so this may just be the best way to get a model of the BP20.